Everyone, it's Melissa the Dreadful Mystic, and today I wanted to talk about jar spells. So, jar spells are exactly what they sound like. They are spells in a jar. And the reason why I use them personally is that they are basically a spell, something that I would cast continuously for, like prosperity or protection. And instead of constantly creating a new spell every month or trying something different every month, once I find something that works, I put it in a jar, basically, and keep feeding it. So, granted, I plan the spell for a jar. So, I don't just do a spell, I'm like, oh, that works, and then stick it in a jar. That doesn't necessarily work well. But I plan for it to be in that jar. So, some of the oldest forms of spellcraft are jar spells. Witch bottles. People know a lot about witch bottles. Even though I find that it's something that people don't do as often now, which is kind of a shame, because the older something is, the more power, to me, is added to it. It is something that has been used consistently. And so you have a lot of this reinforcing thoughts around it, reinforcing energy of witches who have used these witch bottles for ages, So witch bottles are, you take a jar and you fill it with broken bits of glass or nails or bent pins, representing the consequences, so to speak, of someone with ill intent stepping onto your property. You're going to get stuck. You're going to get injured, and your own urine, which, yes, can be icky, and people might not like to think about that aspect of it, but that is a part of the spell. It ties the spell to you, to your property, and it marks your territory. So, and then, whatever herbs you want to put in that add to that protection, crystals, as long as they are for protection, and you bury them on your property lines. So some people bury one in each corner. It just depends really on you and how you want to execute, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that kind of spell. So, let's see. I lost my train of thought there for a while, y'all. So, witch bottles, yeah. And you bury them in the earth. That's where I was going next. So, a lot of people think, when they think of burying something in the earth, as recycling that energy and sort of nullifying it. And yes, we do that, but for this purpose, whenever I create my witch bottles, I am not thinking of nullifying, I'm thinking of saturating the earth with this intent. So a lot of it has to do with the way you approach it and the way you program that energy, in my opinion, at least in my experience. So, and I also program it for the earth to feed it, to the energies of the earth, to keep feeding it. To me, protection has a lot of ties to earth. You're pulling that down into the physical realm, that intent, but you're also protection is a very material, very physical thing. So the earth can feed into that and constantly feed into that spell to keep it going. Again, that's the beauty of jar spells, is you cast the main spell and then you just keep feeding it, keep building upon it. And I also do other things. I will have a powder blend that I sprinkle on top of where I've buried them. I know where each one is buried, and that will also feed into it and give it that extra oomph, that extra kick. But overall, the earth also is feeding into that. So they're really effective. And again, like I said, to me, it's something that I think witches should be using more often, because it's a very powerful way to protect your space. So there is that. Sweetening jars. Y'all know we already did a video on that with deviant witchery, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But I will say another great benefit of having a jar that's a sweetening jar in my experience, is the fact that you're sweetening someone to you. So having that jar in close proximity to you is another kind of sympathetic magic, sympathetic energy, and symbolic energy of attracting this to you. So that's another reason why I enjoy jar spells. Souring jars, we are going to discuss that on Deviant Witchery. So again, I'm not going to go too far into it, but the reason why I enjoy souring jars to use, and obviously you use them for maledictive purposes, and it's not like I'm souring just everybody in the world or anything, but when it's needed, a souring jar works really well in my experience, because the person you're souring is already pretty damn sour, or you wouldn't be souring them to begin with. Most nice people, sweet people, don't go around being assholes. So you take that souring jar and you use their own nature to help feed into that spell, and sour them, because they're already pretty sour. So it just kind of adds an extra layer of sourness, because whatever they did deserve that. So now, souring jars I do not keep too close to myself necessarily, because I don't want them, soured towards me per se. I want them soured, towards their own life, their own situation. So I don't necessarily keep them close to me. I usually keep them somewhere dark, isolated, and away from everything. And I also use a lot of personal concerns if available. So again, that's a part of their own nature. So yeah, we'll go into a lot more detail on that in Deviant Witchery, and I will make sure after we do the show, this will come out before the show, but I'll go back and link it so anybody who watches it afterwards can catch it and watch the replay. So there's souring jars. There are saint spell jars. Saint spell jars are really interesting. I think I've not personally used them, but if you do work with saints, and I work with a couple, but if you do work with saints and you have a specific petition that you want them to help you with, something that may be ongoing and continuance in your life, if you want continued help in your craft, because there are saints for that. I did a video a while back, and I'll link it so you can check that out, because I believe I mentioned the saints associated with witchcraft and the occult. But or any other thing that you work with saints for, and you want something that's ongoing, you put the petition in the bottom of the jar, and then you add things that will appeal to them. So in a way, it's kind of like an offering with purpose. So you add things that will appeal to them that also benefit that petition, and you keep them going. You can set the saint, if you have a saint statue, on top of your saint spell jar. Or, you set the saint spell jar, that's kind of a tongue twister, in front of said saint, or on that altar, if you have an altar specifically for that saint, and burn candles on top of it, and keep feeding it energy as well as adding things to it. So, yeah, those, I haven't used them personally, but from what I understand, they can be very, very powerful tools. So there are those. And honestly, guys, you can do anything. Like, again, prosperity jar spells, and keep prosperity flowing into your house, flowing into your business, flowing to both you and your partner, however you want to arrange it. So there really is no limit in what you can do. To me, the important thing to remember is when you put something in a jar, it's not to contain it per se. If you go in with that attitude, it might backfire on you depending on what, you want to accomplish. And that was something I had to learn the hard way. So, and I apologize for the lawnmower noises. We're doing yard stuff. But yeah, so I had to learn that the hard way. To me, I think about it more like an environment for a spell in which it can grow, and the container doesn't necessarily hold the spell in. It just keeps it in a easy access place where I can continue to feed it. And that to me is another important thing. You will have to keep feeding it. You know, I've not yet found a spell jar that worked well, or a jar spell that worked well when you just do it and ignore it. At least that's not been my experience. So another type of jar spell that's a rather old idea is a bottle tree, spirit bottle tree. And I don't know about y'all, it's really popular around here, and I'm sure that they don't understand where it comes from, because like one of the preachers, the churches around here has one in his yard, and I just want to ask him if he knows what it's supposed to really be for, but I don't. Anyway, spirit bottle trees originated in Africa and were brought over here. And basically what they are is traditionally cobalt blue bottles. And the blue is significant because it's supposed to represent water, and water has a lot of ties with spirit work, as far as, you know, water flows in a lot of the same ways as spirit. It's kind of that in-between state of the earth, physical, and air, spirit. You know, so when you're focusing on trapping evil spirits, they are usually those stuck between life, earth, and death, air, you know. So yeah, that is one of the reasons for the significance. Also, water is supposed to dispel or help dispel evil spirits. There's a lot of folklore behind that. So yeah, that's the significance of cobalt blue spirit bottles. And you put them on crepe myrtles traditionally. Now, crepe myrtles again have a lot of ties in with the spirit world, protection, banishing of evil entities. So that is why they use crepe myrtles. So they put the cobalt blue bottles on the branches where they are upside down. The evil spirits travel into them, being tempted, you know, by the color, the fact that something's shiny, the fact that it's a bottle, you know, and this happens at night, and when the sun comes up the next morning, poof, they're gone. So the sun burns them up. So yeah, and also this is another thing that has ties to do with jinns, genies, and things like that, who are also thought to be trickster spirits more so than helpful spirits. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting lore around spirit bottle trees. So also in hoodoo, spirit bottles, not necessarily a tree, but spirit bottles, spirit jars, can be a home for relatives that have passed on, beneficial and benevolent spirits to work with, and not necessarily to trap, but to offer them a place to reside. And that kind of ties in with the spirit house video I did a while back with Cunning Folk Magic. And yeah, there's a lot of correlation and ties there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you a lot to think about, some inspiration, ideas. I will probably write a blog post later on, so that gives you a little bit more in-depth look, and possibly even share a jar spell recipe of my very own with you. So I hope you enjoy it, and when I do write that blog post, I'll link it up here. I'm probably going to have it done before this thing loads. So So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Definitely check out my website, melissathe.dreadfulmystic.com. It is new. I have switched web hosting sites. I'm really excited about it. I have a newsletter, guys. It's on my Facebook page, and I'm going to start doing more Facebook Live videos, even though they nerve me out for some reason. So I just need to get used to it. It's a different platform. And yeah, so check out my Facebook page. You can find all those links down below. So thanks, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you later on.